Welcome to the RD2BE podcast. Each week we sit down with a different registered dietitian nutritionist to showcase the diversity of opportunity in the dietetics profession. Our aim is to dismantle the notion that there is a traditional career path. I'm Carl Barnes, the registered dietitian behind the scenes of RD2BE.
And I am Jenna Warnock, the RD2BE host. Our RD guests share their stories, career paths, and advice to help students like us succeed in the profession. Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your RD2BE host, Jenna, and this week we're sitting down with Dr. Lacie Peterson, and she is one of the awesome directors to Utah State's Masters of Dietetics Administration. It's pretty new and really exciting, and we are looking forward to kind of diving into this program that could be offered to RD2Bs. So, Dr. Peterson, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with us.
So happy to be here with you, Jenna. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Mm-hmm. And so first, we kind of just want to get started with how you got your position and how you obtained it with being program director of the MDA program.
Right, yeah. So I actually started my career working in diabetes management and endocrinology right out of my dietetics program. And in this position that I had, I often was a preceptor for students. That's actually how I initially was introduced to the Utah State University dietetics programs. I loved working with students. And then when I found like 7 years into my career, when I wanted to change directions, I thought about what I liked the most. And one of the things I liked the most was working with students. It just happened to be about the same time a faculty position opened up at Utah State University. I interviewed, I was offered the position, and so I joined the faculty in 2013, and then I became the program director in 2018.
Awesome. And so you did kind of give a little background to what you did prior to the position, but whenever it came to that application and that interview, were there any specific experiences from the past that helped you fulfill the current role that you have?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that was important was personally having a clinical background in dietetics. I think it's really nice when you have professors who have experience being dietitians, and I had a considerable amount of clinical experience. Personally, I feel more comfortable teaching things that I've had a personal experience with versus this trying to teach out of a textbook. Now, there are things I need to teach out of a textbook because I can't have experiences in all areas of dietetics, but that clinical foundation really helped me to be able to continue to teach clinical skills to students within our program. With that being said, I also have other faculty members within the program who have very diverse skill sets. And so we have a faculty member, Nikki, who has her CNSC, and she is really into critical care nutrition. And then also Maria, she's had a lot of experience in food service management and wellness. And then my experience in outpatient counseling. I've actually also worked in telehealth. I've worked for internal medicine, and I've also been a pharmaceutical sales rep. So together we have a lot of broad experiences within dietetics. And I think that this is really important to us, but some of the things that really helped me to get that position within Utah State was my background as a working dietitian.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's awesome how your current team, you pull from your different strengths and you don't rely on one person for just one thing. It's kind of you collaborate with your entire group, which is really how dietetics should be. And so with Utah State's program, we did mention you are the director of their Masters of Dietetics Administration. That I'm sure is a new phrase or new offer in the dietetics field. And so can you describe exactly what that type of graduate degree is and how it differs between an MBA or just a Master's of Science?
Absolutely. Actually, Utah State University has been offering a Master of Dietetics Administration for almost 20 years. So we've had the Master of Dietetics Administration. We've also had our Dietetic Internship program, which I was the director of as well, and we're finishing out that program. And so with the requirement of that master's degree coming in the near future, we decided to take our online program, the MDA, and our Dietetic Internship and create a new combined accelerated program to offer to dietetic students. And so with that requirement of the master's degree, we realized that that's created some additional barriers for students who want to become dietitians. And I think one of the goals at Utah State University is really to work to break down those barriers. So we actually reaccredited our entire program from a dietetic internship into a future education model. And we can talk about that a little bit more here in the future. But that has allowed us to offer this accelerated program. So what is an MDA? And so it is a little bit different from an MBA, but more similar than than it is to a Master of Science. I have a Master of Science degree in nutrition, and that was great for me because I didn't have a bachelor's degree in nutrition. And so I obtained that Master of Science in nutrition. I did my supervised practice. I became a dietitian. But for someone who might already have a bachelor's degree in nutrition, they might want to diversify their skills and experiences. And that's where the MDA can come in. We know that there are some concerns that people might have as they go into dietetics. One, there's a lot of coursework and schoolwork that's required to obtain this RDN credential. And then also we see this on social, so it's hard not to ignore that there's a lot of talk about salaries. And the thing to know about salaries is there are low salaries and there are high salaries, but we do know that dietitians who move into leadership and management roles on average get paid more. So as we start looking at this new master's requirement and how we could serve dietetic students better, we decided that we wanted to have an emphasis on leadership and management and take that undergrad training in nutrition and not repeat that, but build on it with these specific courses in leadership and management and additional training in leadership and management. So when students graduate from our program, they're ready to go into the field in any area of dietetics, but they're also ready for higher level positions. So an MBA is similar, so it does focus on business skills. And our program also focuses on business skills, but more applicable directly to dietetics. And so we really focus on not only coursework, but the application piece of that program. And so you're going to get experiences in finance, HR, these different business skills that you wouldn't traditionally see in a Master of Science in Nutrition program.
Awesome. And I think that was a great way how you deconstructed it and kind of was able to compare and contrast, but also still say, but this is what an MDA offers compared to the others. And so you did mention how you were able to fully transition from the dietetic internship accreditation all the way to a future education model accreditation, which is awesome. And especially when it comes to opening up opportunities to people, this is definitely a great step. And so can you go through that process into what made your program transition specifically from an internship model to a future education model?
Absolutely. So we had the option is we could just combine into a master's plus DI. We had all the pieces to do that. But again, we were looking at how can we break down barriers. The barriers that I see as far as dietetic education go right now is, the new requirement of a master's degree. And I actually support, increasing education. I have a PhD. I actually just recently got my PhD, and it was really because of this master's requirement coming down. And I wanted to make sure that I could continue to support and help my students as they were required to have a higher level of education. And so we knew, though, if we combined the master's degree and the dietetic internship exactly how they were, it was going to be a longer program and it was going to be more expensive. And so as I looked at the opportunities and the options for offering programs that would end up with that RDN credential or the eligibility to take the exam, the future education model kind of provided some more flexibility on how we created our program. So we're offering a 1-year program that is a master's degree and that 1,000 hours of supervised experiential learning. And the only way that we could really do that is under a future education model, which allows us to kind of integrate the competencies, the experiences, the coursework, and that supervised experiential learning within all of the classes. And that's why we can offer a program that's 1 year compared to 1.5 or 2 years.
Yeah, and definitely that can really be appealing to a lot of different students. And so would you say that your program attracts a specific type of student that applies? Or would you say, do you have anywhere from undergrads with DPD verification statements or all the way to second career or one or the other?
Right now, we are requiring that students do have a DPD verification statement. We have written into our accreditation to accept students that don't have a DPD verification statement. But as I've looked through it more, I've realized that with the amount of coursework that would need to be completed to kind of complete all of the prerequisites to have that foundation in nutrition, there are some really great schools that offer just verification statements that would actually be faster for students to complete than kind of just completing coursework here or coursework there. We are going to probably open up those opportunities as we get in farther into the program, but right now we do require that verification statement. I think the students that really connect with our program the most are students who really want to move quickly through a program. And so we're looking for students who have really good organization organizational skills. We're looking for students who can prioritize tasks and students who really want to just kind of get things done. That is not every student, but I know there are lots of students out there who say, I want to get from point A to point B as quick as possible, but get the training and the education that I need to have a successful career. Now, there's other students out there who say, like, I need more flexibility. I need to have a longer timeline. Maybe I need to work part-time or full-time as I complete my program. And there are lots of programs out there that can support that. But our current program, or this new program that we are offering, because it is accelerated, it is quite rigorous and it will get people to the end quicker, but there is a little bit less flexibility in the timelines.
Definitely. And I think it's great how you guys prioritize, hey, get in and get done, but also don't cut corners or don't lose out on a quality education and like requiring that DPT verification statement before applying. And so you did mention how rigorous a year of both your supervised experiential learning and that master's degree is. And so what type of resources, and especially with it also being distance, so you have a lot of layers of like a lot of pressure that it seems to be on the student, or, they might feel that pressure. And so what type of resources or forms of support does your program have so that the students don't really feel like they're a fish out of water?
Absolutely. I think first off, Utah State University, the dietetic internship previously, and now the MDA, we've been offering distance dietetics education since 1999. We're the second oldest distance program in the United States. So if there's one thing that we really know how to do, it's we know how to support students coast to coast. We have a really large team in our program, and so students have a lot of resources that they connect with every step of the way. So there's myself as the program director. We have two other full-time faculty members, Nikki and Maria. We have a full-time staff person who helps students with onboarding and requirements. And we also have two teaching assistants who are registered dietitians with master's degrees. So we don't have students do our TA work. We have registered dietitians who are working in the field do our TA work. So there's a huge group of, dietitians that can support students every step of the way. And although I did mention that this program is rigorous, it's not as overwhelming as it might seem. So it's a 3-semester program. Semester 1, you're completing some of your supervised practice and you're taking one leadership and management course. The second semester, you're finishing your supervised practice and you're taking a second leadership and management course. The third semester, you're taking a communication course focused specifically on dietetics. You're taking a research course also specifically on dietetics, and you're doing your master's project. And you will work with a preceptor on the master's project, and you will have an assigned faculty member to also work with you on that master's project. So again, there's a lot of resources and support every step of the way. So I find that, the graduates of our program, either the dietetic internship alone or the MDA, that's one of the things that they'll talk about the most, is that the support is always there. The communication is excellent, and that our students never feel alone or they don't know what to do next.
And I think you just provided an awesome list of the different ways that no matter where you are in the program, how you can still feel that support virtually and during your rotations and everything like that. And so with the supervised experiential learning sites, do you have to kind of, since you start at the first semester going into your SELs right off the get-go, how far out in advance do the students have to have their sites secured or guaranteed?
Great question. We do ask that the supervised experiential learning, like rotation sites, are identified as part of the application process. And exactly as you mentioned, Jenna, it's because we start with supervised practice. There are some programs that end with supervised practice, so it's not as important to identify those facilities initially, but because as soon as, we accept students, we work on new student onboarding, and then in August, we get started, we need to make sure that everything is lined up. There's a lot that goes into supervised practice, so we have to make sure that we have agreements in place. There's student onboarding, there's background checks, drug screens, different facility requirements. And so in the summer, we're going to be working on all of those things for all of our students, and we want to make sure that students can get started in August with those SEL sites. If they haven't been identified, we really can't start the program. So we do ask that those are identified as part of the application.
And I think that's a great way to kind of kill two birds with one stone. You just kind of have everything front loaded information wise, so that once you do get accepted, it's kind of streamlined and like, okay, just this thing and then onto this thing, and then you're ready to do it in the fall. And so you did mention a lot of really awesome things that Utah State has, whether being the second oldest distance program in the country, offering an accelerated program where you knock out your SELs as well as a unique MDA. And so, but if you were to choose as the program director, do you have like one thing that you're most proud of regarding Utah State's program?
I would have to say, I mean, this sounds a little bit cheesy, but the thing I'm proud of the most is really our graduates. Since I've been here, we've graduated almost 600 students. A lot of students, right? And I still have really close communication and interactions with many students, like I said, across the country. And they're doing amazing things. Like often, people might ask us, what do your graduates do? Where do your graduates end up? And they end up in all areas of dietetics. A lot of students end up working in clinical because there's a largest number of jobs like within clinical nutrition. But I have students who work in clinical, inpatient, outpatient, long-term care, rehab. I have students working in lots of different leadership and management roles, so whether that's being a clinical nutrition manager, directors of nutrition services, food service directors. We have a lot of students who work in school food service management, and those are really great jobs that have very decent pay. We have students who work at WIC. We have students who work at the food bank. We have lots of students who work in private practice. And so as we continue, building these programs, we are looking to support students that want to work in any area of dietetics. We don't have a specific area of dietetics we focus on, which is why we chose that leadership and management direction, because whatever a student's interest is, we want to support them in that interest and being the best dietitian they can be and really having the most rewarding career as possible. So I always think back to my students, like I'm so proud of all of the things that they've done and all of their achievements. And I think that's why I love this job so much, is because every year I get to watch students enter the field of dietetics and really flourish.
And I think it's also great how you mentioned having that leadership experience in the program. It really, because you don't have any specific niche of dietetics that you kind of target the students to go into after they graduate, having that leadership role, they can just take charge of wherever they want to go. They can just have that confidence, have that knowledge to just plant themselves wherever they want to go. And then they can just, because they have the program and that MDA behind them, they can confidently grow up and do what they want to do. Because, for example, we had Danielle Gaffin in the past, and she did your program, and she has her private practice. And just seeing her experience, how she did it through COVID, and she was still able to get everything done, just no matter what hit her. It was crazy to see just her ending up on top and doing what she wanted. And it was because of your program that she was able to, despite being in that time frame. It's just really awesome to see how, like, no matter what time frame the student is in your program or what they want to do afterwards, they really do have the knowledge that they need to be able to do what they want to do. And so and
yeah, with the example of Danielle, it was great. I mean, she started her internship like really smack dab in the middle of COVID. She started in January of 2020, and then March 16th of 2020, everything shut down. And we made a lot of accommodations for students. I mean, we had 45 students removed from rotation when COVID hit. 2 weeks later, we matched 60 new students. So in that moment, I had 105 students, and I'm like, what are we going to do? And everybody looks at me and like, okay, what are we going to do? And I'm like, well, we really haven't experienced this before, but we're going to make the best of it. And I really have to say, we did make the best of it. My team and I sat down and we rewrote all of our curriculum in a 2-week period of time. We rewrote everything we possibly could to help people to continue to get hours to move forward in the program. We partnered with probably about 20 private practice dietitians who already had virtual practices, and we connected students to those private practice dietitians. I will say the one thing we didn't do is we did not forego that clinical rotation though. And I think in the moment, some students who only had clinical to finish the program were a little bit frustrated with me because I would not graduate them without an in-person, face-to-face inpatient rotation. And we do require that those are in a hospital. But after the fact, when it was all said and done and everyone graduated, because everybody did, many of them came back to me and said, thank you. Thank you for not letting me miss that piece of my training, because it did change everything. Like that inpatient training really does lay a really important foundation, regardless if you want to work in inpatient or not. So in the case of Danielle, we had a lot of downtime, and she expressed to me that she was interested in starting a private practice after she graduated. And my recommendation to her at the time was, let's start it now. I said, we have this downtime. And so we talked about how to start a website, and we kind of put some pieces together and talked about how she could start implementing those things right now while she was, waiting for opportunities to open for rotations during COVID. And I think sometimes students are hesitant to get started like while they're still in their training. And I will tell you, there are some professors out there who say you cannot start a private practice, you cannot do these things until you have that RD credential. That doesn't happen to be me. I would say if you have the idea, you have a degree in nutrition, let's move forward. Let's start getting you moving down that career path that you want to be on. There's no benefit of waiting another year. If you have the time, the energy, and the resources, let's start it now. So when you do have that RDN credential, you're just adding that on, but you're still making headway towards the career that you want to have in the end.
And I think it is completely admirable how you guys like just starting from the beginning with when COVID hit, you guys switched gears and was able to turn everything around in 2 weeks for over 100 students. And I think especially and also what you did with Danielle, starting her business while she was still a student, not holding the students back. I think Utah State definitely and what you were most proud of as well, you guys put the students first. And not only do you say that, it shows. And it shows in a lot of different ways. And I think it's definitely an awesome program, not only for students who just want to get in and get out, but also those that want to make the most of their experience and not be held back. And so regarding still you being most proud of the students in your program, do you have any future goals or projects you're working on for the future?
Well, I'd say we're always revamping things. I laugh because, we do work in a very close team environment. So Nikki, Marie, and I, we work every week together. We're always revamping curriculum. We did it every year, even when we were the dietetic internship and things weren't changing. We're always revamping things. We're always collecting feedback from our students, from our preceptors. We're looking at changes within dietetics and ensuring that we are on the cutting edge of what's coming down the pipeline. I'm lucky enough to be an Ascend reviewer as well. And Maria and I we've both been item writers for the RD exam. So I feel like we've been able to gain a lot of insight to like the future of dietetics as well. So we're always trying to incorporate new things, new ideas, new skills into our curriculum at all points in time, again, to make sure that we are graduating students, who are going to just jump into their careers at the highest level possible. So right now we're really just finalizing a lot of things for this new program that will be starting in August, and it is funny, we have to kind of redo everything because we can't use the word intern anymore. And so like everything within our program has to be redone, but it's a really great opportunity to revamp things. And, we've all been in classes where we watch a lecture, we do something and we think as a student, how old is this? So really nothing that we do here is that old because we are always revamping, but it's really fun right now because we are redoing every single thing within the program.
Yeah, and it's definitely just kind of not wiping the slate clean per se, but it's really just like starting a new page in the chapter, especially with, again, like nutrition is an ever-changing field, but I feel like especially now, it's just been, time has been flying by super fast, but it just seems to be going like super duper quickly with how things are turning over and changing. And if I was a student in your program, I think just hearing what you said, how you're also an Ascend reviewer and you've also seen some RD exam questions, that's one thing that I would love about the faculty and staff. But do you have a common thing that you hear from students? Because I'm sure you definitely connect with them and keep in contact with them. Is there a common thread that you see with the students of like what they love the most about the program or what they find most enjoyable about it?
I think it's a couple things. One, I think they love the communication. We talk to our students every single week. There's constant communication. We kind of joke sometimes because if a student emails us, sometimes we email them back in 30 seconds. Like we're all sitting at our computers all day long. 100% of our teaching responsibilities are to this program. And so we're really easy to get a hold of. Even if I tend to not necessarily work a 8 to 5 schedule. I work more of a 10 to 7 schedule because like I work with a lot of students who are on the West Coast. So I tend to start earlier and work later because that's when most of the communication happens with them when they're outside of their rotations. So I think they love the communication. One of the things I also always hear from students and also preceptors is we're very organized. So we have this like binder that we give our students on their first day, and every single thing is laid out. Like there's no guessing, there's no figuring it out. When we have competencies, we integrate all of our competencies like into assignment. So students don't have to worry about how they're going to meet a competency. We give them ideas to meet the competencies, and then they complete those tasks or assignments, and we check off all the competencies like on the back end. So they have a very easy time to understand what the progression is through the program. We've also, because we've been doing this so long, we have a lot of different resources that we provide. We provide like color-coded sample schedules so they know what assignments take the longest and which ones are shorter. We actually estimate the timeframes for all the assignments so they know if something's going to take an hour or if it's going to take 6 hours to complete an assignment. So as they're prioritizing tasks, they can utilize all of these resources that we have. The final thing is that we do a lot of RD exam prep. Now, we don't buy prep materials because everybody learns a little bit differently. If we were to choose one type of RD exam study material, we would have to provide it to all of the students. And to be honest, if a school buys you RD exam prep materials, in the end, you're paying for them because that's just how things work. There's a fee, there's a something. So we don't do that. We let students buy their own materials, acquire their own materials to see like what's best fit for their studying. But we do have a lot of exams and practice exams within our program that we have written ourselves. So there's an exam before you start the program. There is an exam after you finish the program. There are practice questions that students can practice every single week. And then we have 3 large comprehensive exams, one for food service, one for community, and one for clinical, that are embedded within the program. So you're not going to see these questions anywhere else. We're not taking these questions from other study materials. We've written everything from scratch. And so this is just another component of preparing for the RD exam that we provide to our students. And this year, I'm really proud to say this year, right now, our RD exam pass rate, first time pass rate, is 96%. Programs have to report their 1-year pass rate. So when you see it on our websites, it says 1-year pass rate is this percentage, but our first time pass rate this year is a 96%.
That's crazy because because if I'm not mistaken, the exam pass rates have been a little wishy-washy over the past couple of years.
Like 67%, 72%.
That
Yes.
type of wishy-washy. Yeah. And so
Yes.
it's great how that's crazy. Like, and that's first time, because that's not even talking about like what you said, a year out or anything like that.
First time.
So, yeah. And so I think definitely just the common theme is like the preparedness that the students have, literally from the start of acceptance all the way to taking that RD exam. And I think that definitely just kind of having a student hear that, like, oh, in this program for that year, 96%, and you take a lot of students as well. And so that was a lot of students passing the first time and like getting their career started. And I think that goes to show how awesome and structured your program is and how organized it is to allow the students to succeed. And so with the kind of pieces of knowledge, and I'm sure the students hearing like, oh, exam rates are going down, and then that 50% match rate for internships and things like that, lots of misconceptions about becoming a registered dietitian and things like that. Are there any specific misconceptions or things you've seen circling around the RD2BE kind of realm that you would want to clear up or kind of ease worries about?
One of the things, obviously the big thing that I hear right now is salaries. That's like the number one thing I hear is people don't want to go into dietetics because of the low salaries. And as I mentioned before, there are low salaries and there are high salaries and there's kind of everything in between. And so I think often students aren't aware of all of the opportunities in dietetics. And so I've been a dietitian for almost 17 years now. And as I mentioned, I've done a lot of different things. But one of the things that I learned in my very first job was looking at how to negotiate salaries. And we also provide a whole module on negotiating salaries, like at the end of our program. So pre-graduation, we talk about negotiating salaries and give tips and tricks related to that. But I think it's really important to understand that there are a lot of opportunities in dietetics, and we really can determine what our salaries are because we have the opportunity to move from one job to another job. And, historically, as I grew up and I completed college, it was still in the mindset you like got a job and you stayed at that job for 20 years. And when I got my first job, I thought I will be here for 20 years. And I wasn't. I was there for 7. And then I started moving around. But the thing I love most about dietetics is there's a lot of autonomy with this job. There's a lot of flexibility. There's, you know, so many different career paths that you can move down. And I think as new grads, and I was the exact same when I was a new grad, I kind of had my mind focused on one thing. And this is what I'm going to do with my entire career. And we realize that that changes over time. Our life experiences change over time. And the things that we need to make us happy also change over time. But I find as far as jobs where you're a healthcare provider, this is one of the jobs that provides the most flexibility. I always compare this to my husband. My husband's a pharmacist, but neither one of us do patient-facing care right now. So he does a lot of policy development. He does a thing called drug information, where he is an expertise in a lot of different areas. But after COVID, we both largely work from home. So I have an office downstairs. He has an office upstairs. But his job is very he really has an 8 to 5 job. He is at his desk from 8 to 5. He doesn't have a lot of autonomy or flexibility. He needs to be there at all points in time. Where I have a ton of autonomy in my position, and I have in other positions I've held as well. And I think that's one of the things that brings me the most joy. And so just understanding that there are so many opportunities in dietetics, we can negotiate our salaries. It's sometimes a little bit more difficult to negotiate autonomy. And with the impacts of COVID, there were definitely some negative impacts, but there are some really positive impacts as well. There are so many jobs that have so much more flexibility than we had ever imagined before. I love being a dietitian. I also love food. And so I just think about for somebody who is interested in healthcare and they love food, I think being a dietitian is still a really great career path. You just have to go into it knowing that there is some negotiation and that really our opportunities are only limited by our imagination. If you only see yourself in one position for the rest of your life, I think people get stuck in that area and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't make enough money here," but they don't also want to leave. And I see that often on social. It's like, "Well, I've been in this job for 15 years and I don't make any money." And my first thought is, leave. And obviously, people who live in rural areas maybe don't have as many opportunities, but there are so many opportunities out there. The more we know, I think the easier it is to have a really great, rewarding, and financially successful career in dietetics.
And yeah, and I think honestly, you saying all of that, like whether it's the salary, the autonomy, all of the awesome positives to dietetics, I think that should definitely get students excited. And I think with the negotiating a salary, that can sound super intimidating and kind of scary to speak for yourself and kind of be like, this is what I want in this position. But really, I think definitely once you kind of learn how to do it and once you put it into practice, it can be really empowering because I do feel like a lot of imposter syndrome is definitely something that kind of circulates in RD2Bs and a lot of nutrition students. But I think one of the big turnarounds of overcoming it and kind of being your own boss in that sense is the seeking that higher salary that you deserve for a position and kind of knowing how to speak for yourself for that. And so I think that's a great thing to have nutrition students or dietetic students have in mind now, so that whenever they take it in the future, they can kind of see that as an option and kind of be excited about the opportunity and not really feel kind of closed with anything. And so the last question that we have is what is something that you wish every RD2B knew about the future of the okay, I'm gonna redo that one because my brain just blah blah blah. Okay. So our last question that we have for you is what is something you wish every RD2B knew about supervised practice programs or the future of dietetics, or both, just either or if you have something in particular.
I think the one thing I'd love RD2Bs to know about supervised practice is that supervised practice is like a game changer. Again, we all spend time on social. I love to read, RD2B information on social. I love to get on Reddit and follow the different listservs there and just hear the questions that RD2Bs have. There's a lot of talk about why do we need to do supervised practice? Why do we need this experiential learning? Can't I just get a job? But I think the experience is so important because we don't know what we don't know. And I think once students and graduates have experienced that, I don't think they ever reflect back and think, I really didn't need that training. Because that training, although it is a relatively short period of time. So supervised practice, 1,000 hours of supervised practice is really 6 to 7 months. Depending on the program that you're in, obviously programs could be longer, but that one piece is about 6 months of training. And then it allows you to really step into a career and be a contributing member of whatever team immediately. And I think that training also helps us to overcome that imposter syndrome. Because if we stepped into these jobs without that hands-on experience, we would have such a greater learning curve. Because in a job, we don't have a preceptor. We don't have someone with us at every moment in time, working with us, helping us to critically think and problem solving, giving us direction. I know even when I started my first job as a dietitian, I sat down my computer and I was like, here we go. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I've had the training. But I had experiences in a clinic. I knew how to get into an EMR. I knew how to room a patient. I knew how to do all of these things. I was still nervous about it, but I knew how to do it. If we didn't have this training, if we graduated from our programs, we just went and got a job and we hope for the best, I think a lot of us would really struggle. And so I encourage students to really embrace that supervised experiential learning, be open to the experiences, even if you think it's something that you might not be interested in. We don't really know the trajectory of our careers. When I was a student, I could have never imagined that I would be a college professor working in academia. I didn't have the best GPA, going into my program. I just never saw that for myself, but I found that this is where my strengths are used the most. I love helping people obtain their goals. I loved helping patients obtain their goals. I love helping students obtain their goals. And this is where my strengths shine. So I just encourage people to be open to all of those experiences that are going to be laid out for them. And just thinking about how all of this kind of skills cross over to every area of dietetics. If you're in clinical and clinical's not your favorite thing, you're going to really be able to learn how to have difficult conversations. You're going to be able to negotiate. You're going to be able to critically think, and that's going to apply to private practice, food service, community, or anything else. If you're in food service management and you're like, I don't really like food service management, you're going to see a lot of leadership and management skills and how to run teams. And that's going to cross over to all of those different areas of dietetics as well. So there's something to be learned in every area of supervised practice, supervised experiential learning. Just embrace it because it really does change everything. And it really allows you to apply everything that you learned in those textbooks. You get to apply it in real situations, and then you're absolutely ready to enter that career.
Yeah, and I think you worded all of that beautifully, just with the you don't know what you don't know until you fully just embrace it and kind of take in everything that you can and taking advantage of that time to learn. And so thank you so much, Dr. Peterson, for sharing your awesome program and how it's impacted so many students. And really just thank you so much for describing what an awesome program Utah State offers.
Thanks, Jenna. It was my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here and share this information with you.